And it's my pleasure to introduce you to this evening's speaker. I first knew her in 1994. She was my advisee. And in those days, we even called them freshman advisees at Washington Lee. Now they're called first years, of course. She came to study public policy. And for one thing, that's never changed. She's had a constant interest in public policy. She was a student leader at Washington Lee in forming the SHECP program at Washington Lee, which began in 1997, and Victoria graduated in 1998. She was in the first capstone seminar, though we couldn't call it a capstone then because it happened before we even had an internship with Berea and Spillman. Victoria has been a supporter of the SHECP program at Washington Lee ever since that time, and she continues to serve on the SHECP program advisory board. She's the first person from the SHECP program to speak at one of our symposia. All of this means that I knew Victoria before she knew her husband, Stuart, who is here with us tonight. And before Annabelle, who is 5. Is that right? 7, okay. And Banks, who is how many? 3. They are taking a carriage ride tonight. So they chose that over hearing their mom speak. Debbie and I were privileged to be at Stuart and Victoria's wedding in Little Rock. Now, none of this explains why she's a speaker. It only explains why I'm proud. I'm proud to be able to introduce her. Her distinguished career in policy analysis and in promoting health, especially children's health, explain why Victoria is with us this evening. After working in state government and with educational institutions as a public policy analyst and advocate, Victoria worked with the Alliance for Healthier Generations for 7 years, negotiating agreements with major food distributors in order to reduce childhood obesity. She was the vice president for strategic planning for the Alliance when she took a position only recently, May? Close enough, with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. She continues to work and persuade the private sector to take actions that will contribute to the public health by reducing childhood obesity. As we have learned today, childhood obesity has become an increasingly acute public health problem among low-income Americans. Those of you who have read recent articles in the New York Times that I actually sent out to all the interns know that the remedy for this problem is now focused on public health more than on simple individual responsibility. Certainly that is the focus of our speakers today, and it will be the focus of, it's been the focus of Victoria's comments earlier, and it will be her focus tonight. Victoria's success can be measured to some extent by the agreements she has negotiated with McDonald's and other major companies. Recent evidence also points to some decreases in childhood obesity, but I know that Victoria, a graduate of the LBJ School in Public Policy Analysis, will not take sole responsibility for that slight decrease in childhood obesity. I am sure she will be eager to continue to work on many fronts, and that's what she's here to talk with us about tonight. What we do know is Victoria has maintained an interest in public policy and in seeking justice since 1994, when she was my advisee at Washington Lee. So the subject matter for this evening is private sector engagement in the fight against childhood obesity. Thank you, Victoria.
Hi. This is a heady moment for me to be here as a former W&L student at VMI. I'd been here maybe once in my undergraduate career, so it's wonderful to actually come here and see how fantastic it is. And to come after Sandy Hassink, who I have worked with and admired for so long, and Elaine Waxman, who I admired from afar, and to be with you guys tonight. And so thank you for having me, and thank you to my college mentor, who I think it's fair to say that I was nowhere near as sophisticated as you all are in my undergraduate days at W&L, and I don't think I totally understood what the Shepherd program was going to be and the roadmap we were on. And in retrospect, to look out and see you guys here is truly amazing, and it is a testament to Dr. Beckley's hard work, but also, I think to the need for what this sort of triad of learning can do for our future. And so I'm glad to be here today. The other big challenge is that I'm coming after you've eaten, after a long summer, after a long day, and I don't want y'all to go to sleep. And so I'm going to try really hard to keep you guys engaged, and I'm going to do it in a way that idealistic young college students, it might rub some people the wrong way or raise an eyebrow, and I hope it does. So ask me questions along the way. So I thought that there was no better place to start than this crazy experience I had 2 years ago. And as Harlan so nicely said, I've worked my entire career in, public health, public policy. I've been in state government, I've been in academia, I've worked in direct service. And so all of a sudden, I found myself on the front row in a convention in Tampa, Florida. And it's the only one besides the ones in Las Vegas that can hold this many people. It's about 50, 60,000 people. I'm on the front row, and Neo is performing. It's very loud. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's really, really bizarre. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? This is actually a picture of it. And behind are big jumbotrons of his performance. And people are up clapping, screaming, and it is the McDonald's biannual owner-operator convention where they all gather. Some of you might know about this. They all gather once every 2 years. Every person from around the world gets together in Tampa, not Tampa, Orlando, gets together and they talk and share their supply. It's fascinating, just from a pure, let's get educated standpoint. Their supply, how to train, how their operations go, what they're going to do, how they train their customers, new products, taste test, everything. And their CEO comes out, and he is treated like a rock star. People are on their feet, taking selfies, trying to wave, do everything, and the next thing you know, there is my face on a jumbotron, which, similar to standing up in front of you guys, is my version of a nightmare. And they say, we're here today to talk about the Alliance for a Healthier Generation and what our business did. And it got some people excited, some people not. But I'd argue that how I was there, which is not where I'm supposed to be, has very much to do with the type of summer you've all had and the experiences that you're cobbling together and forming as you think about what you're going to do someday when you're out in the world and making your career. And it's these intersections of how systems collide, how you can be in one vein here in your public health do-gooder hat, which we all wear and we wear proudly, and you can be one vein here with your corporate hat, which they should wear proudly, but that the unique things happen when we work together. And so that is the focus of what I'm going to talk to today, and why I think that you all in particular with the on-the-ground experience that you've had this summer, coupled with what you're learning in the classroom, can really, find yourself in a similar, very strange situation. So I talk about what is a public-private partnership. And, the other thing that I'd say that I'm going to differ from in my talk tonight is that I'm going to keep you away from statistics. You've seen it, you've read it, you've lived it, you study it. I am not the girl that's going to give you more. We're going to operate on the assumption that we know that things are a problem, but it's more the how you can tackle an issue of social concern. And a public-private partnership is when, two entities come together around a social problem, a social need. And it might be solidified. The ones I've been involved with are solidified through a legal agreement, so they are legal. You would take someone to court if they didn't follow through, and solidified that way. And when are they the answer? And my argument is, and I've been now doing this for a long time, is they are increasingly, I think, the way that we're going to have to get things done. I think if the tide and the things keep happening in Washington and we read the stories that we read, and it's like running through glue, the most exciting, innovative things you're going to see is when state or local folks get together in communities and they make it happen on the ground, or when you see these intersections between different sectors coming together to make things happen. And that's where true innovation can happen. I don't think we can wait for the folks in Washington to do it for us. And what are they good for? I think they're good for complex problems. Y'all heard this morning or this afternoon about the complexity of childhood obesity and what this means and how we got here. And I was saying to the smaller group today that I think the reason I've been interested in it is the intellectual exercise of what it requires, all the different components and facets of our society and how we ended up with the mammoth problem that we have today. The way we live, work, eat, and pray, it all affects it. And so I think bringing together the public sector, your governments, your NGOs, with the private sector, your companies, and forging these ways are ways you can address the complexities of really unique and thorny problems like the obesity epidemic. And, when can they be effective? I think that they're also effective, and what makes them effective is when they're meaningful and measurable, which we'll also talk about today in terms of making sure that things actually get done. And what are some examples? And so I'll give you some examples of what that might look like. So you heard Harlan say that I worked with McDonald's. And again, I'll tell a story. When I was pregnant with my son, I got a phone call, and it was from McDonald's wanting to do a stakeholder session. And this is the big behemoth. You could argue that the one place you shouldn't be if you care about child health is why should you ever be sitting down with McDonald's? And I would argue back, that's the one place you need to be sitting down talking to now. They can talk to your child, they can talk to that family, they're in communities where we would only hope we would have that reach into. So that's the number one entity you should be engaging with, understanding, building a relationship. And 2 years later, we ended up with a global agreement with McDonald's that I think laid a good foundation for other restaurants and other of their peers to make some similar changes, to reformat their entire menu to make it more open for health and well-being and really position it to kids. The agreement is global, which means that it cuts across their 20 top markets across the globe. By markets, it's countries. So about 85% of their global sales. And it really intersects, and I think the issue of food marketing is one we touched on earlier, but both in what's actually provided and how something is actually marketed or sold or presented. That they have research that shows I could walk into McDonald's and I'm very well intended, I'm going to get the salad and I walk out with French fries. That is real. And so how can you make that customer experience me open to actually making a different choice, or even knowing that the different choice exists and it's not buried underneath a menu board. And so the agreement tenets focused on that, both the experiential and the actual supply of what's available. The agreement went through things like a choice. So instead of just knowing that fries are what you're going to get, having the salad and the fries, and it's there together. Only having water, milk, and juice on a Happy Meal, which we'll talk a little bit more, but as you know, soda is the target number one in the obesity epidemic right now, and pulling that off, what that means for kids. What did these kind of things require? And I'll go through more. It's really understanding that for them to make choices, which seems very simple, take off the soda off the menu board. What does that mean? It means they're going to have to retrain all their customers about when they're walking you through and I'm typing it in my keyboard, instead of saying what sort of soda, I need the prompt to say water, milk, or juice. Or you have to redo your computer graphics on the screen so that it shows the salad as well as the fries. And so it's that complexity of going in to apply the business realities with what your public health goal is and how you can marry the two. The other thing that I would say that it helps with all of this stuff is having people skills. You have to make people like you and trust you and understand that you can be a good actor in all this to bring it all together. The next thing is around offering new fruit and vegetable options. They introduced cuties this year. I don't know if anybody saw them, the little oranges. It's the first time a fast food restaurant has offered a whole fruit. It's not packaged, it's not sprinkled with anything that they say the apple slices are, just an orange. For them to do that, what that means for the supply side of the cutie population is the wrong word, supply, quantity, in the United States. And this is just here in the U.S. and other markets. They've had kiwis on a stick, pineapples. But again, that marketing component, what it means for food marketing when a kid sees a kiwi on a stick versus a pineapple that's in a cool package versus, fruit that might not be as appealing. And I think you have to recognize that that's what you're up against. And then that their advertising has some sort of well-being message as a part of it. What this means is that it's going to get to the kids that need it the most. And those kids that might not be going to McDonald's where what it was designed, or where probably a lot of you had it in your households, where McDonald's was a treat, which is fine, to where McDonald's is actually the affordable place for your family to buy food on a day-to-day basis. And so ensuring that there is access, when that is your reality, to these types of fruits and vegetables and options and choices that, I think folks deserve and need to have a healthy life. And so this just talks again about the scope of the sales and where it impacts. It shows the markets that's up there where it goes. Now I'm going to attempt to show you all a video, if it works, that'll talk a little bit about did they do it. Here we go. This is in my attempt to keep everybody up after their dinner.
McDonald's started with a mission to help families increase access to fruits and vegetables, and formed a partnership with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation on 5 commitments impacting 20 global markets by 2020. We started with 2 major markets, our largest, the US, and Italy, and now have some exciting preliminary progress to share. By focusing our first commitment on featuring only water, milk, and juice as the beverages in Happy Meals, we saw a 9 percentage point increase in milk and juice selections in the first 11 months in the US. This contributed to 21 million more low-fat and fat-free milk jugs and apple juice boxes being selected for Happy Meals and a la carte options in the U.S. After removing soda listings from Happy Meal menus in the U.S., soda selections fell by 8%. We dedicated our second commitment to offering alternatives to fries in value meals, like side salads and other produce options. And now 96% of McDonald's Italy restaurants and 83% of McDonald's US restaurants offer side salads and other produce options. Our third commitment was designed to generate excitement for fruit, vegetables, and dairy with Happy Meals. Fruit sides have steadily increased in Italy from 2013 to 2014. Meanwhile, McDonald's USA has served the following in Happy Meals and a la carte: 38 million Cuties Clementines, 161 million tubes of Go-Gurt low-fat strawberry yogurt, and 380 million bags of apple slices. Commitment 4 focuses on using our Happy Meal boxes to deliver well-being messages. And both the U.S. and Italy have exceeded the 4-box minimum requirement. And lastly, our 5th commitment focuses on including well-being messages in 100% of kids' advertising, something in which the U.S. and Italy are already more than 99% compliant. There's more to do, but we're off to a great start. Thanks for watching.
So you'll see at the bottom, one of the things about, I think, what makes private sector engagement so, that is hilarious. Let's click it through. People really don't like them. One of the things that I think makes it important when you work with big public companies is that they are more powerful than you. So we're all lowly individuals trying to do something good. And these are big, complex organizations with resources that you could never even imagine. And making sure that you evaluate and assess what they do and assess, did they meet the goals? It can't be an emotional argument. And so that was all based on their first year research report that we did that will assess it and then assess it through the end of the measurement period. The other thing that is notable is what one agreement with one company and the domino effect that you can make. When we did this, since the point of taking soda off the menu boards at McDonald's, it's happened with Wendy's, with Dairy Queen, with Applebee's, with Burger King, companies that wouldn't even take the phone call. But now they need to do it because a market leader did it and they needed to follow suit. The same went for the Go-Gurt tubes, which are yogurt for those of you that don't day-to-day trade in and out with 3- and 4-year-olds like I do. They are a yogurt, and this yogurt is full of sugar, like so many processed foods were, but the ones that were made for McDonald's are 25% less sugar than the ones I'm going to go and buy at my Kroger. And so now the movement is if you're going to sell them at McDonald's, why not sell them at Kroger? And so it's a way to push that supply. So again, I think these intersections are nice ways that you can get at social problems, but through business motivations and the marriage of the two. The second one is with the beverage industry. Again, you know, they have been, I think, in a lot of ways, and I will not remark if it's merited or not, but they are the target number one in the obesity epidemic. And in 2007, they made a very smart decision, and also a smart both for kids, but smart also for their bottom line, to take soda out of schools, which was an agreement that was made with my organization prior to me joining, which meant that I think probably a lot of you, if it held true, if you were in elementary school or junior high school, you wouldn't have a Coke machine in your cafeteria, or the Coke machine would sell, once you're in high school, diet drinks versus full-calorie sodas. And so getting the soda out of the schools was the first step. And since then, and again, going back to what makes a good public-private partnership, is understanding how you can get them to do more. And so earlier, or a year ago, we pushed them to make another agreement with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation around people overall. Most people drink, you can drink more of your calories. People don't even understand that a calorie that you drink and a calorie that I eat are the same thing. I didn't understand that, I don't think, until I got into this world. And so simply by pulling calories out of the diet, what you can do for overall American health and well-being. And so they have a commitment around reducing calories consumed by sugar-sweetened beverages by 20% within 10 years, which is seismic in what it will mean, again, for marketing. So remember that bad picture this afternoon with the convenience store that Elaine had? So that would mean that you would pull out the Mountain Dew and put it over on a shelf, and you would have to have something else here in the front because I need to actually see some type of triggers that will happen slowly over time for them to have a prayer of reaching this 20% metric. I'm going to show another video that hopefully won't have a bad clip at the end, but if it does, it'll be a good story to tell. And it is my organization, I'm going to show it just because it's kind of fun, because my organization spokesperson is President Clinton, and so you get to see him announcing it.
Today we announce a profoundly important commitment to combat the obesity epidemic by cutting calories in America's soft drinks. The fact that this industry is prepared to do this and believes they can do good and make a profit is the beginning of the effort. And I predict to you that if what happened in the schools is any indication, when this announcement is made and people see that they're serious about it, then other people who make snack foods and lots of other things, they're going to get a lot of partners, because people say, well, if they did this and they figured out how to do it, maybe we can do it too. This is a very big deal, and I think we should give them a big hand.
So that'll give you a sense of what it is and what it means. This is just starting, and it's gotten good attention and bad attention, which I think in this public-private partnerships role, that's how these things go. One of the unique things about it, and again, I think making sure that when you work at a systems level, it actually has applications to folks working and living in their day-to-day communities, is that it has a twofold goal that mirrors that of Healthy People 2020, that it is to reduce the calories consumed by sugar-sweetened beverages nationwide by 20%, but also to do it by 20% in 8 to 10 communities of places that need it the most. So to use Nielsen data, zip code data, to really determine where folks are really struggling, which quite frankly is everywhere. When you look at the maps, the gradations, as we saw earlier, are so you have to get down to the lightest purple versus the darkest purple to find these. But find communities where folks are really struggling and what can happen if you double down on education efforts, marketing efforts, and putting the beverage companies to work for this good. So having them in the communities and trying to sell their water products over their full-calorie soda products. I would argue it's an experiment, but why not put them to work for it? Right now, these efforts are happening in Los Angeles and Little Rock, two very different communities, and they'll be introducing them throughout the next few years. And so it will be something all of us can see together if this type of experiment does work. Again, it is being evaluated, monitored, checked. I think when you bring these multi-sectoral groups together, that aspect of things to keep everything honest and on the up and up is critical, and it's critical both for the NGO working with them, but also for the companies to make sure they can get rewarded for doing the right thing, should it happen.
They get a very high level.
Ooh, back. This is why I shouldn't have done with my Mac. So we'll skip that, and then we'll go to this. Let me see. There. One of the things, and this is a great slide, and it's one that I'm sure Sandy has seen a lot, about where do you expect to learn about childhood obesity? And I always heard, go to the schools. And this speaks to, again, all the different sectors coming together. And the number one place where people think they need to find resources for this is the doctor's office. You expect that your pediatrician, your family practitioner, your Dr. Hassink is going to sit down with you and tell you exactly what you should be doing and lead you along the way. And should a problem represent, that they have the recourse to bring you back in and talk about it, or the recourse to refer you out so you can get the resources that you need. And what is found is that that's not necessarily true, which I guess isn't a big surprise when you think about the complex nature of our healthcare system, but that most insurance programs don't pay for you. If I came in and I sat down and my child is struggling, my family is struggling, the doctor in most situations right now can say, good luck, see you in a year, wishing you best of luck to you. Instead of bringing them back in, referring them to a registered dietitian, finding out what they need so that a year from now the problem hasn't gotten worse, and actually I get diabetes and I have a reason to actually bring you back in. We're trying to get it before it happens, so that focus on prevention. And so an idea that is still kind of bubbling up, and I think one that is still trying to catch wind, is how can you unkink, again, in complicated systems, unkink the water hose so that a provider can actually do what they're trained to do. How can they come in and work with the patient to help them in these individual circumstances? And so we've created, and this is one now, there's a lot of different projects up and running, and what I'll show you in a minute is something in Virginia, which I thought was nice, was a health benefit program. And now there is Cigna and Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Virginia, Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, major employers, Accenture, others that have come together to say, we think that this is a problem. And by getting insurers and employers, you get both aspects of the paid-for healthcare system. And so this benefit program helps to address families and helps for doctors, again, to do what they need to do. And so I'll show you one last video on what that can mean.
Luke has been a patient in our office since he was born. He came here for his newborn visit, and he has struggled with his weight since he was about 3 to 4 years old.
While I was competing in sports, I realized that I was a little slow, or I wasn't moving quick enough, and I realized it was because, I was a little overweight.
Luke had continually battled his weight over the years since he was 4 years old. Before Dr. Babcock came to us, it was a yearly event. Luke and I dreaded going to the pediatrician because we knew we were going to get a lecture about his weight.
Dr. Babcock suggested that I incorporate more vegetables and fruits into my diet and to cut back less on bread and pasta and starches and sugar.
Within the past year, he made significant improvement in his body mass index.
So you have not gained any weight in a whole year.
I remember sitting in the doctor's office and Luke looking at the screen and said, "Can you please print that so we can take a copy of my BMI with me so that I can show everybody?" He was really, really proud.
I feel a lot better after I've lost all this weight. Kids should be motivated to stay healthy and stay active because they'll feel a lot better about themselves.
I think it's very important for pediatricians to address childhood obesity because a lot of times if it's not addressed at a checkup appointment, it's not going to be addressed by anyone. It would be great to have more children have access to the Healthier Generation benefit.
These are lifelong changes that he realizes he needs to keep in place. He feels better. He's in better shape. He's a better athlete. He's a better person all around because he feels better about himself and is much healthier than he was to begin with.
And I think this tells you why you should care, and what your training this time can tell you how you can make a difference, and that pulling all these things together and having these different groups of knowledge can really help you make change, and that these are ways that you can impact and change what you're focused on after you graduate from school. And so with that, I'll say that's it. Thank you.
Now, we've had a big meal, and it's getting late in the evening, but if anybody's got a burning question that they need to ask, Victoria's just told me she'll willing to respond to some questions. Jonathan Werther.
I guess my question was, it looks like fantastic work. Was it difficult to get them to assess the impact of the work in these sort of partnerships where you have public partners and private partners?
Yes and no. I think that you have to look at where they're coming from. So initially, they think, don't even come in here. You have to sign an NDA. You have to do everything to protect whatever we're going to say. But at the end of the day, they want you to celebrate them doing the right thing. And so the only way you can is if you have data. And so that's the way you do it, and have it in the MOU.
What if the data turned out to be bad?
And that happens. I would argue that you're positioning it as it's an experiment, it's an innovation. So them trying it, it's not bad. And I think it's how you sell it and position it.
So you worked with McDonald's and the beverage industry. What do you think is next? Like sugary cereals, or do you have a plan in mind for what's next, what you would like to tackle?
In terms of what's next, I think a lot of it is making sure that the problems that we've gotten and the advances stay current. I think that there's a lot to do around unkinking food distribution and making sure that communities, rural and suburban, can get the good food, not just the large urban areas.
All right, so I guess this is more of a comment than a question. Earlier we were talking about bridging the gap between children and their parents with kind of sometimes you have the problem where the child wants to be healthier but the parent isn't really supporting that. And just recently going away to Berea, Kentucky, where I didn't have anyone cooking for me, like my meal plan or anything like that, and I had to make food. So I found that I ate a lot less healthier than I would if I was at home or even at school, because I think just kind of in this day and age, parents don't actually cook with their kids, and they let their kids kind of go off and do other things. So when we get on our own, we make bad choices because we don't actually know how to cook. And then I just think that if you have a kid actually standing there right there with you, you might actually have a better chance of them making healthy decisions. And even in the video that you showed, Luke was actually cooking, with his mother. So I think that'll just be a good way to segue into bridging the gap between parents and children. And that will actually help with healthier habits down the road when we actually get out on our own.
So you're right. And I think that you're smart enough and know that. So many people, that's not their reality. And so their first exposure to health literacy or food literacy might be at McDonald's. And then slowly you can bring them to where that they would even understand that to be true.
I was just curious on the reduction of calories in the soda beverages. I thought you mentioned something about replacing it with water, bottled water. Maybe you didn't, but I'm just curious about in reducing the calories, there's also a concern, I think, at least with the bottled water industry. And so I just wondered if you had any comment about that.
So you're going to have to expand. So with the bottled water industry, in what way?
Well, just that we're marketed to believe that water is better if it's bottled, and it's not. And then there's the whole environmental issue around the plastic. And there are places in the country that need water that no longer have it because of bottled water, and those are just some of the issues.
So I have to play in my lane. I'm not an environmentalist. I agree with you. And I think there's also things you can do and things we've had conversations with how could you refurbish schools so that their pipes make water more palatable, or how you can get water hydration stations into major communities. And so there's ways to do that so you're not just relying on bottled water, to your point.
With the bottom line for the beverage industry and McDonald's, how do you make it so that it's beneficial for the companies to do the right thing?
I think you have to make it so it's beneficial that they get recognized, that they get the positive story. All these companies are getting slammed, so that they can get some sort of goodwill from when they do try to do the right thing.
Could you say a little bit more about the process of conversation with McDonald's, of what changes might be possible to be made, the salad and the fries and all that? Were you part of that conversation, or had you discussed a general plan and then they held the conversations?
Yes, so I led those conversations, and I think the first step was actually getting to know them. And so the first part was being quiet and learning about their challenges, their business, their priorities, and then making my asks and understanding the asks that were unreasonable and unattainable, and then working back from there.
I want to close off by thanking Victoria and Sandy and Elaine for being here and helping us out with this important material today. Thank you.